over 40 years ago, there were over 200 dairy farms that I took care of, and an awful lot of them right here in this area. And I got a quick education in shrimp and bouillon and Belgian pie and all that. But it's changing rapidly, so it is important to preserve it. I can tell one story that Wilford Vanderheide had told me. Wilford had a dairy farm about 2 miles from here. His family still runs the farm. Maybe there's a family here, I don't know. But at one time, Wilford's farm was the top producing dairy farm in Wisconsin. And like a lot of the older Belgians at that time, they had grown up speaking Walloon in their house, which of course is closer related to French. Well, Wilford told me the story of how these two guys from Quebec came down to buy a bull from him. And they're looking at the bull and they start talking to each other in French, and assuming Wilford couldn't understand it, one guy said, you know, this is a nice bull. I think we can go to $1,000. Let's see if we can get it for $500. And Wilford just kind of hid his smile, but he sold it for $1,000. So anyway, again, there's so much of that kind of heritage here, and I truly appreciate everything being done. I should mention one big win I think that we had in historical preservation this year was saving the Potawatomi Tower in the state park, and that was the first tower in Wisconsin. That was the first tower in Wisconsin that was built for tourism. York County really led the way in tourism. Every tower prior to that had just been for fire observation. And the governor at one point said that they would not save that tower unless it was made handicap accessible, which was impossible. So that essentially meant the tower would be torn down. So it was a big win, and it wasn't an accident that they didn't. There was no big halo when they reopened it. They kind of just wanted to walk back from that real slowly, you know. But that was a big win, and it took place because there were a lot of people in our area that cared so much about preserving our history. So anyway, thanks again for being here, and thanks for everything everyone is doing to protect our history.
Joel said everything that I would have loved to say. Did a great job of representing the history of our county. Now I'd like to introduce a person that is one of the unheralded people that works for Destination Door County, which has graciously allowed us to create a history trail, our heritage trail. Elizabeth is a Door County native, and has done a great job helping us get to this point. So tell us about it.
Hi everybody, my name is Charney. I'm the Marketing and Sales Manager at Destination Burke County. Thank you for joining us for History Week. I'm excited to introduce a new initiative with Destination Burke County that brings our rich heritage to life in a fresh, engaging, and interactive way, the Heritage Trail Pass. Door County is known for its stunning landscapes, its vibrant communities, but what truly makes this place unforgettable is its history. From maritime traditions to the Belgian settlements, lighthouses, museums, and natural wonders, our story is written across the landscape. This summer, we're proud to launch the Heritage Trail Pass, a free digital experience that guides you through 28 historic sites across the county. There's no app to download. You just sign up and start exploring from your phone. As you visit each location for checking in, you'll earn fun rewards like 7 sites to take and get the sticker pack, or 14 sites to take and get a Heritage Trail branded tote bag to put all of your goodies in. This pass isn't just a fun challenge, it's a meaningful way for us to take and connect with the people, places, and story that has shaped the spirit of Burke County. We'd also like to take and extend a heartfelt thank you to the Heritage Alliance of Door County, whose partnership and support were instrumental in bringing this project to life. Their dedication in preserving and sharing our local history has shaped every part of this experience. The Heritage Trail Pass actually launches today, just in time for History Week. To view all participating sites, explore the interactive maps that we have, and learn more about the rewards, you can actually take and visit doorcounty.com/heritagetrail. You will also find printed brochures of the participating trail locations at community visitor centers, the Destination Door County Welcome Center, and any of the participating locations. These informational resources take and include past details, full map of the sites, and a brief outside or stop by our table. So just grab your phone and get ready to uncover the people, places, and stories that have shaped DeVooght County. The Heritage Trail Pass is your invitation to explore, connect, and experience history in a whole new way. Because history isn't just something that we look back on, it's something we live with every single day. By visiting these sites, you're helping out stories and keeping them alive, ensuring that they continue to inspire generations to come. So thank you for being here.
This year's History Week theme is all about preservation. And preservation in Burke County is more than just some bureaucrats in an office trying to save a few buildings or something like that. It's a broad-based effort that occurs throughout the county every year. Just look at the building around you and you'll see how important preservation is, that we've been able to preserve this. The next speakers are going to talk about preservation that is going on right here in Burke County today. And we'll start with Amy Frank, the director of the Burke County Historical Society.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Amy Frank. I'm the executive director of the DeVooght County Historical Society, and I'm excited to share with you the story of Eagle Bluff Light Station, a DeVooght County icon for over 150 years, and the important restoration work that is taking place and continues to take place to preserve it for future generations. Eagle Bluff Lighthouse was built in 1868 to help guide ships safely through the treacherous waters of the Strawberry Channel every day. For decades, it served as a beacon for mariners and a home for lighthouse keepers and their families. In 1926, the light was automated and no longer required a full-time lightkeeper to live on property. Peninsula State Park used the keeper's residence for a variety of purposes, including ranger housing and summer rentals. Ultimately, because there was no running water or electricity, visitors and park employees lost interest, and the lighthouse was left empty and vacant for several years. However, the light remained optional, as it still is today. Eagle Bluff Lighthouse remains one of the most recognizable historic landmarks in DeVooght County. In 1960, the DeVooght County Historical Society assumed responsibility for preserving and restoring the lighthouse. Volunteers, led by Ida Bay, spent 3 years restoring the lighthouse and opened it as a public museum in the fall of 1963. We believe that that was one of the first, if not the first, lighthouse to be opened as a public museum in the Great Lakes. What started in 1960 continues today as we continuously work to maintain the historical integrity while sharing its story with thousands of visitors annually. Inside the lighthouse, original furnishings help us tell the story of the families who lived here. One favorite artifact is the Chickering piano, purchased by Belgium DeVooght, a keeper in the late 1800s. Captain DuPont, his wife Julia, and their 7 sons lived and worked at the lighthouse for 35 years. It wasn't just a lighthouse, it was a family home. When the piano was delivered, it was too large for the door and had to be hoisted through a window, and that is a story that still delights our visitors today. The piano was recently repaired and tuned, and we're planning to have a concert soon. In 2023, we launched one of the most significant restoration efforts in the lighthouse's history. Based on the Historic Structures Report that was completed in 2020, the project consisted of 3 phases. The first phase addressed immediate stabilization work. The lantern room needed the most work. Metal was sandblasted, rust removed, corrosion repaired, recaulked, and new safety UV glass windows were installed, and the ventilation system was repaired. Bad brick was replaced and tuck pointed, structural concerns were addressed, the spires were rebuilt because they had fallen apart, and the entire building was power washed and the trim was repainted. Inside, we've repaired damaged plaster, walls, and ceilings, and repainted using colors based on historical paint analysis. Currently, we're having all the windows repaired and restored, the interior walls of the basement and tower repaired and repainted, the spiral staircase repainted, and in the fall, the wood floors will be sanded and resealed. Every detail, from paint selection to hardwood restoration was chosen to match the lighthouse's original appearance. Late last fall, we fulfilled one of our bigger goals, adding electricity to the site. This was a huge undertaking and involved trenching from Welker's Point campground, Welker's Point, almost 2 miles to get to the lighthouse. But we are so excited to have electricity. Not only will this aid in our operations and keep our volunteers and staff safe, but it will also preserve all of the work that we're currently doing. This past spring, we began construction on the summer kitchen and the barn that once supported daily life at the lighthouse. While historically accurate from the outside, the inside of the recreated barn will serve as a visitor center with exhibits, displays, a gift shop, and admissions. The loft of the barn will be used for storage for all of our artifacts during the off-season. The summer kitchen will be interpreted for visitors to imagine why it was so important to move cooking outside the house in the summer. These new buildings, combined with the existing lighthouse, oil house, and privy, will enhance the story that we can tell and offer a fuller view of 19th century life at Eagle Bluff Light Station. One of the most meaningful aspects of this work has been the dedication of our volunteers. This project has been talked about and planned for nearly a decade. Over the past year alone, hundreds of volunteers' hours have gone into this project, from historical research, hands-on restoration work, and being on site every day to coordinate the project. Their dedication, passion, and generosity is what has made this restoration possible. Preserving Eagle Bluff Lighthouse, while important work, is not just about honoring the past. It strengthens our community identity, enriches education, and supports Door County's tourism economy. A well-preserved and professionally interpreted historic site benefits everyone who lives here and everyone who visits here. As we continue this work, we're reminded that preservation is a collective effort. Thanks to the commitment of our team, our volunteers, and our community, Eagle Bluff Lighthouse will continue to shine as a symbol for Door County's enduring spirit. Thank you. Hi, so I am Stefanie Burke. I'm the president of the Historical Society, and we are celebrating our 25th year as a society. Tonight is my annual meeting, so this is an exciting and going to be a long day for me and Cheryl. I have been involved with our Historical Society all 25 years. I started off as vice president, and I transitioned into president at going on 20 years. This is where we are now. This is our site at the top of the hill in Ellison Bay. It's the grand view. Though it's definitely been a long journey of moves and countless volunteer hours, we started our museum site with just 4 structures. When we bought the property, we had a house, we had a garage, we had the barn, and we had what is now our log museum. Right now, we currently have added 10 more structures to this property, and I'm going to go over a little bit of what we've done up there. We began with a lovely farmhouse and a detached 2-car garage, and it's right next to our signature building, a big, beautiful white barn. Our grand property overlooks the stunning waters of Ellison Bay. We were honored to partner with the Door County Land Trust and the town of Liberty Grove to preserve the grand view in Ellison Bay. Our grounds provide an entrance and parking to a scenic overlook, which is known as the Grand View Town Park. structured by myself. Many of the buildings that were moved to the top of the hill were moved by my family, along with others in this room. And I'm also going to share a few of those too. Vacation life changed for everyone. Developer Jim and I purchased the Liberty Park Lodge property on the northern part of Sister Bay, and demolition of the shore cottages were to begin in 2006. Thankfully, the Liberty Grove Historical Society saved the cottage called the Pine, while the Sister Bay Historical Society preserved the birch and the balsam. This is our pine cottage as it sits now, and it's used as a backdrop for weddings that we have at the top of the hill. The story of the pine cottage has lovingly been preserved by Naomi Johnson Bergbacher, whose family roots here dated back to 1921. Her family stayed in this cottage. She's one of our volunteers. Her family stayed in this cottage as she was growing up, and she has lovingly helped us restore it and the inside. Here's a couple more of the buildings that we have, structures and buildings that we have brought to the top of the hill. Every farm has had a granary usually, and it's essential for storing grain, obviously, after the threshing machines separate the kernels. The one in the bottom, it would be the bottom left, that's our granary. It was from the Dahlstrom farm just out of Sister Bay. The one on the right is a paper shack that we turned into a summer kitchen. We were blessed to receive 2 buildings during that move, and one we kept as a paper shack, and the other one we turned into a summer kitchen. This is one of our last additions to the top of the hill in Ellison Bay. It's the Gus Klinke Cottage. The Gus Klinke Cottage was moved to our museum grounds in 2020 by my family. It was moved from just behind where Gus Klinke's garage sits. This cottage was brought to the top of the hill. The Klinke family stayed in this cottage when renting out their own home, but they also did rent out this one too. Here's some renovation pictures of the cottage. Just like Eagle Bluff. To move a house, you don't just move it and it's there. There's always a lot of work involved. A foundation, sometimes siding. The Klinke cottage was definitely a labor of love. There was a lot of work that needed to happen to that building, but it was worth saving. This is another notable move here in Door County. Not all of our moves are modest. One of the most notable here in Door County was the Little Sister Barn. At the Little Sister Resort, this barn was moved with 17 other buildings from its original site. I encourage any of you to go and talk to John Lajewski after we're done with our presentations, and he can give you a little bit of update on what's going on in the History Center in Sister Bay. They're actively raising funds to fully preserve the Little Sister Resort Barn as a history center, which will allow them to preserve and share more of Sister Bay's history. Fun fact with the Little Sister move, there were 18 buildings in total, and I live in one of them. I live in the duplex that was at the Little Sister Resort. I added it on to my house. Okay, this one took years off my life. I'm not gonna hide. I'm the behind-the-scenes person. I'm the one
throughout Wisconsin. The purpose of this slide is a lesson. Adam Shearer, the executive director at the Payne Art Museum, pushed for this building to be saved long before my dad died. Not only was it my dad's dream to move this building before my dad died, but Aaron did it because he knew it could be done, because his house was moved in southern Wisconsin, a big old Victorian two-story house when he was a little boy. He was educated when he was little. It's about educating kids when they are young, that buildings, artifacts, photos, history needs to be saved. And it's about teaching kids when they're young. This is my daughter. She has been with me through from birth till now, and this is a picture of all of my family. And I just encourage you that I'm looking around the room and I'm trying to see if there's any younger people in here. This little girl has sat at the top of our hill and picked dandelions since she was a baby. And I encourage all of you to encourage the young people, because that's where the lessons are. The lessons are from the young on all the buildings and artifacts that we can save. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce our host for this event today, people that run the Belgium Heritage Society. And what's important about this is more than a building. It's preservation of a heritage. And that's what we're all about in Door County, which is to not just preserve buildings, but preserve the heritage that we all came to Door County for. So let's hear from them.
Thank you. As Miles mentioned, we're about a lot more than preserving buildings. It's very important to preserve buildings, but it's also important to preserve the culture along with it. So I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about our Belgian culture and the work that we're doing to preserve it. I'd like to start by just orienting everybody to what we mean when we talk about the Belgian settlements in southern Door. Actually, this is part of a larger settlement area that encompasses parts of Door, Brown, and Kewaunee County. The portion in Door County primarily, or the majority being in the townships of Brussels, Union, and Gardner. Starting in 1853, Belgian immigrants began arriving in this area, and about 10,000 showed up over the next decade. Mostly these were farmers and small merchants in Belgium who were experiencing tough economic times, and they were stuck at the low end of the economic ladder. And so when Wisconsin and the federal government was advertising for immigrants to come to this country, they were drawn by the opportunity to buy land, something they couldn't do in Belgium. And so, by chance, they ended up in this area. The Belgians initially had made land claims near Buckhana, but a chance meeting with a fellow Belgian, Father Gaines, who was a priest at Holy Cross Parish in Bay Settlement, caused them to give up those land claims, settle here near what is now Champion. And so some of the communities in Door County that you might recognize as having names from those immigrants, because of the Belgian communities they came from, Brussels, Namur, Rosaire, and many others in Kewaunee County. I hate to miss mentioning Misère. That's not the name of a Belgian place. I think that's describing their experience as it translates from misery in Walloon. So our job here is to preserve the history and the culture of those immigrants. Just a little bit about the Belgium Heritage Center. This was established in 2010 at what had been the St. Mary of Snow's Catholic Parish. We are in the Namur National Landmark Historic District. This is the first rural community in the United States to receive that designation from the Department of the Interior. And our campus includes not just this restored church, but a restored school and convent, a roadside chapel, and a historic cemetery. St. Mary of the Snows was established in 1860. This building, this current brick building, is the third church on this site, and it was completed in 1893. The school and convent next door was completed in 1894. In the 60s, that building was rotated and taken just slightly off campus and became the clubhouse for the Peninsula Belgian American Club. This campus is considered the birthplace of the Norbertine Order of Priests in the United States. That is because Father and later Abbot Pennings started here and spent 5 years at St. Mary's before moving on to the pier where he started St. Bernard Abbey and St. Bernard College. So St. Mary's remained a Catholic parish, the heart of the community for many years, and eventually was merged with our neighboring parish at St. Francis Xavier. But over the years, a decision was made by the church to stop having services here and close the church in 2001. So the building sat idle for about 10 years. And then for some reason, the parish priest became intent on demolishing this historic building. As you might imagine, that didn't sit very well with an awful lot of us. And so that was our call to action. It was time to do something. And so a group of former parishioners and local citizens who were passionate about preserving our history got together and set a goal that they wanted to raise $20,000 as seed money before taking over the church. But in a few weeks, they raised over twice that amount of money. So as soon as we had the church, we began the restoration and the stabilization efforts to preserve the building, and then moved on to developing the exhibits that you see here today. We were also fortunate in 2018 that the Peninsula Belgian American Club, who had taken over the school and convent several years before, decided to donate that building back to us, back to the Belgium Heritage Center, so we could preserve it and also open it to the public. And so since then, we've been working on restoring that building to its original 1900 era appearance. We've made it ADA accessible, and we welcome you to come see it after our presentations. But there was a lot more to preserve than that. We heard about some of these great Belgian foods, and I just want to mention a few more of them. Foods are really an important component of culture, and so it's not just because this stuff is really good, it's because it's really important to preserving what the Belgian settlers brought with them. So you can see there an example of trip, which is a sausage made of pork and cabbage. Looks like a bread, but it's a lot better. Just my opinion. Belgian pies, which look kind of like an oversized Danish. The waffles, we call them galettes. These are actually not what you normally think of as a waffle. These are a little bit denser, not quite as sweet, and they're often served with warm milk and cinnamon. Really good, and actually a New Year's tradition. Then there's jut. Jut is cooked cabbage that is fried back in bacon grease and butter with spices. It's really good, not healthy, but really good. And of course, our bouillon. Bouillon is made throughout the Belgian settlements, although I'm going to lay claim to our recent award. The Belgium Heritage Center's bouillon was recently voted the fan favorite and the judge's favorite during the NFL draft bouillon battle. So you can get great bouillon anywhere. You can get great bouillon in a lot of places in the Belgian settlement, but this is where you get the best bouillon. One of our other traditions, and this is one of the great opportunities to experience Belgian food, is our kermis. Kermis means church mass, and it actually is a tradition that originated in Belgium and started here in Rosaire in 1858. By that time, the Belgians had been here 5 years, breaking their backs trying to settle the wilderness, and they finally decided it was time to have a little fun. And so when Belgians decide to do something, they're going to do it. So most of these communities hosted what was a 3-day festival. It started with Mass, but then they went on to 3 days of drinking, dancing, celebrating, card playing, whatever you can think of, and having a good time. So all those little villages on the map that I showed you earlier, well, they each had their weekend where they would host their 3-day kermis. So there was a lot of partying going on down here in the fall after the hard work was done. And this is a tradition that continues to this day in some of the communities including here at the Belgium Heritage Center. Another really important aspect of preserving our culture is preserving the immigrant language. Walloon was one of 2 languages spoken in Belgium at the time of the immigration. Flemish was spoken in Flanders in the northern part of Belgium, and Walloon was spoken in the southern part called Wallonia. Immigrants to this area came from both regions, but for whatever reason, Walloon language persisted over time. It was actually spoken as a first language in many homes well into the 1940s. It is an endangered language now, but there are still people who speak it, and efforts are underway to preserve it through oral histories and a website that we will be launching soon so you can learn to speak Walloon yourself. Of course, Belgian brick houses dot the landscape in this area throughout the 3-county region that I showed you. This is an example of a house that's been restored over time. It's a beautiful example. Belgian brick houses became dominant after the Great Fire of 1871. Before that, houses were built of log, and that didn't survive as well as one would have hoped in the face of the Great Fire, which, as many of you know, was a huge firestorm that swept through from New Franken all the way up to Little Sturgeon in 1871, decimating many of these Belgian settlements. So after the fire, when they rebuilt, they still built log homes, but they used a brick veneer as a fire-resistant exterior. And so some of the other details that you see in that picture is a distinctive trim over the windows. They tended to be a rectangular footprint, 2 stories. At least the main portion of the house was built that way. And then you see the gable window up at the top. That was not just decorative. Many people use that as a lookout for fire in the future. Probably one of the favorite Belgian traditions is our roadside chapel tradition. This is again a tradition that was brought from Belgium. In the days before there were churches, many people built little chapels on their own property. And even though they were built and owned by private individuals, they were open to the public. And so these chapels date back to the earliest days of the settlement, and they were still being built as recently as last year. So we're aware of 37 of them that dot the landscape. We have a map if you're interested. Strongly encourage you to experience those as you have an opportunity. Also, on Thursday at 1 o'clock, Barb Chisholm, our historian, will be sharing a lot of the really neat little stories behind all these chapels. Summer kitchens are pretty common out here too, and one of the unique features that many of them contained was a bake oven attached to that summer kitchen. And those were meant for baking like a dozen loaves of bread or Belgian pies to feed the multi-generational families that were common in those days. And so a lot of those buildings are still here. They're not necessarily used as bake ovens or summer kitchens, but they remain in use as sheds or other just bulk buildings for people. And I think maybe the most important legacy is the settlers' farms and the settlers' original land claims that remain in the families today. These 2 farms that are pictured here are examples of the larger, more industrial farms that you might see, or just the small family farms. But they're both in their 5th generation, both started by Belgian immigrants, and there are many such examples throughout the Belgian settlements. And so today, this area remains an ethnic island. It's called that because of the persistence of land ownership and the traditions over time as we move from the original settlers. 100 years after the first settlers arrived, 70% of the land was still in the hands of descendants of those original immigrants. And the most recent survey shows that in some cases it's still over 50%. And so that land that the Belgians came here to settle obviously was as important to their descendants as it was to them. And so why is this? There are many immigrant stories, many immigrant successes as we see throughout Burke County, but why here did the Belgians remain so intact? And we think there are a couple of reasons. One is the strong family and community ties, the connection to the land itself, as I mentioned, but also if you remember, Father Danes, who brought the Belgians to the Champion area that spread through this particular region, brought us to an area that would eventually be bordered by Green Bay, Sturgeon Bay, and the Oklahoma-Luxembourg area. And so it was easy for people to stay right in this area, this very rural area, right on the farm, and still have employment and economic opportunities associated with these larger communities. So we are grateful for Father Danes for having brought us to this wonderful place that gave us a great opportunity to persist as long as we have. We remain, to this day, the largest rural Belgian settlement in the United States. And so we are very pleased today to be, I guess depending on how you look at it, either the first or the last step on the Heritage Trail Pass. We hope everybody will take an opportunity. And I don't know if I'm cheating or not, but the pass number for the Heritage Center is 1255 if you want to log in and get your points for us today. If you'd like to experience Belgian culture for yourself or some of our events, we've got a few coming up that are listed there. Our docents are happy to give you more information about any of them. And so now it's time to turn this over to all of the great organizations that are here today. Thank you all for coming, and don't forget to download your app. Thank you.